In a place where words fall short and silence is the only sound that echoes through eternity, we stand at the gates of Auschwitz, where the unthinkable became reality and humanity was lost in the darkest depths of horror. Here, the world witnessed the ultimate evil, and the soul of humanity was scarred forever. Let us bear witness to the unthinkable and unspeakable, and honor the memories of the innocent lives that were brutally taken, never to be forgotten. Guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm in Auschwitz, trying to visit this historical site. It's very painful and difficult task to describe what I've seen, and the best way to do this is going to be to show you guys videos and provide as much information as I can. There are some rooms that we were not allowed to obviously take a picture out of respect for the victims, and it's tough, very tough to imagine how evil men can be. So after a bus ride, we arrived by these well-known gates that reads Arbeit macht frei, which stands for work sets you free. And this is the beginning of the lie that the victims were told as soon as they arrived in Auschwitz. One thing to remember throughout this story is that these victims who arrived here were lied from the very moment they arrived. They had absolutely no idea what is about to happen to them. And it started as soon as they crossed the gate. Crossing the gates was a surreal experience. This is a place that I've always wanted to visit because I'm a fan of history. And it's hard to put in words the feeling of sadness and sorrow, knowing how many people lost their lives right in this area that I'm visiting. As soon as you cross the gate, it doesn't take long before you realize that this was, in fact, a prison. And for many, the very last place they will see alive. The whole entire place is surrounded with electrical barbed wire fences, and they had security gates everywhere. There was no escaping in Auschwitz. Historians estimate that over 1 million people perished in Auschwitz, and most of them were Jews. But it also included Poles, Belarusians, even Austrians, and a few others, as also political prisoners were assassinated right here. Auschwitz was initially constructed in 1940 as a concentration camp for political prisoners. The site quickly expanded to include Auschwitz II Birkenau, that we will visit later on in the video. This camp was built by the SS using forced labor from prisoners, and it became the largest of the Nazi concentration and extermination camps. The complex included numerous sub-camps, gas chambers, crematoria, and other facilities designed for mass murder and forced labor. The size of Auschwitz took my breath away. Block 4 housed the first gas chamber. Nazis deported Jews from all parts of Europe and forced them here. They were packed in trains with no food or water for days, with no idea what was awaiting them. The Nazis continued to lie about the plans for them. Their fate was decided by a thumb going to the left or right. Clutching their belongings, they stood on the platform, men, women, and children, believing they were being relocated for a better life. The deception of safety masked the reality of imminent suffering and death, making these moments of arrival some of the most heart-wrenching in the history of humanity. SS men escorted the men, women, and children selected for death to the gas chambers. Trucks carried those too infirm to walk, and the rest marched. Each of these cans contained enough Zyklon B gas to kill 2,000 prisoners in 20 minutes. People were stripped of everything. Here you can see their glasses, their prayer shawls, combs and scissors, brushes, their shoes, their clothing, their prosthetic limbs. Auschwitz originally was conceived as a concentration camp to be used as a detention center for the many Polish citizens arrested after Germany annexed the country in 1939. Once Hitler's final solution became official Nazi policy, Auschwitz was deemed to be an ideal camp. And the reason why is because it was situated between the center of all German-occupied countries on the European continent. Another reason is because it was in close proximity to the string of rail lines used to transport detainees to the network of Nazis camps. The Nazis gave the Jews false hope about their fate in order to make them more compliant. Standing before the towering display of shoes in Auschwitz, I am overwhelmed by the magnitude of loss it represents. Each pair tells a story of a life cut short, a dream unfulfilled, a family torn apart. These shoes, once belonging to men, women, and children, are silent witnesses to the unimaginable horrors endured here. They are a stark reminder of the humanity stripped away and the identities erased, urging us to remember and honor those who perished. People marked their luggage before being deported from the Jewish ghettos because they were told they were being relocated and would need to find it later. The Nazis ensured that each block had a sinister purpose. This area here features pictures of victims. They were methodically photographed with their name and a few other identifiers. Nazis reduced these Jews to a number tattooed on their arm. And a symbol stitched to their chest. But we see them and know their names. I'm standing amidst the echoes of a tragic past, surrounded by the faces and stories of those who were lost. The names, the dates, the lives cut short, each one a poignant reminder of the unimaginable suffering that took place at Auschwitz. As I gaze upon these photographs, I'm struck with the realization that these were ordinary people with dreams, hopes, and fears, just like us. Yet, their lives were brutally interrupted by the darkest of human atrocities. The prisoners at the labor and concentration camp of Auschwitz were starved and worked to death. Those who arrived and were unable to work were gassed immediately. Auschwitz was the only concentration camp that took individual photos of the people interned there. The process primarily occurred in the beginning and was later replaced by the tattooing system. The reason was mainly to identify a prisoner in case they escaped. Only prisoners who survived the selection and were chosen for work were registered. Those who were selected for death right away were not registered. Photographing was replaced by tattooing, also because processing the photos and using the material took a lot of time. Tattooing was more efficient as thousands of more prisoners were arriving at Auschwitz. Due to the terrible treatment of prisoners, the photos did not have long-term use. Prisoners were subject to horrible conditions, including starvation and the risk of beating. A malnourished prisoner after 2 months in Auschwitz was going to look far different from when they arrived at the camp. The vast majority of photos survived the war because the Nazi photographers disobeyed orders to destroy the photos in January 1945, when the Soviets were closing in on the camp. Auschwitz was also the only place where prisoners actually had their camp number tattooed on their bodies. The whole idea was to make it easier to identify the corpses. Prisoners at Auschwitz and in other German concentration camps had all of the hair of their bodies cut and shaved off during induction procedures. This procedure was applied for escape prevention. The SS main office directed to store prisoners' hair and to sell it to the German companies as an industrial raw material. The hair of Jewish women murdered in the gas chambers was also put to use. These stripped uniforms, worn by prisoners at Auschwitz, symbolized the dehumanizing conditions they endured. Each piece of clothing stripped away their identity, reducing them to a mere number in a brutal regime of oppression and suffering. Women were forced to be naked and their entire bodies shaven, making them unrecognizable. From the fall of 1941 to 1943, the majority of executions were carried out on this wall. The condemned prisoners had to strip naked in Block 11 on the ground floor, women among them disrobed in separate rooms. The women were then led into the courtyard and shot first. The condemned prisoners were led to the walls in pairs. The SS executioner walked up from behind them and shot them in the back of the head with a small caliber rifle. Executions were also carried out in the gas chambers in Auschwitz. In the second part of 1941 and at the beginning of the following year, about 2,000 Soviet POWs were killed in this way. This family, full of life and love, stood together in front of the very place where their lives would soon be brutally taken. The gas chamber looms behind them, a stark reminder of the horrors that awaited them. Yet, in this moment, they stand strong, their faces filled with hope and resilience. They are the testament to the human spirit, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always love, always family, and always hope. Then we took a walk inside the gas chamber. I was overwhelmed by the silence that once echoed with unimaginable horrors. This was a place where countless lives were extinguished, a stark reminder of humanity's darkest capabilities. The air feels heavy, as if it carries the weight of the sorrow and suffering that unfolded here. And now, as I stand before the crematory, the final destination for so many innocent souls, I am struck by the brutal efficiency of this machinery of death. Here, ashes became the only remnants of lives that were full of dreams, hope, and love. This place is a graveyard for memory, a testament to the depth of cruelty that were reached. More than 1,400 corpses could be burned in this crematorium every 24 hours that was operating day and night. The first commandant of Auschwitz, Rudolf Hotz, was actually trialed and hung right in Auschwitz. Rudolf Hotz was hanged in a courtyard next to the former crematorium of Auschwitz. Hotz was the commander of the Auschwitz concentration and extermination camp. In this role, he was responsible for the deaths of nearly 1 million Jews and other prisoners at the camp. We went roughly about 3 miles from there to the second side of Auschwitz, which is known by the name of Auschwitz-Birkenau. And this is a section that was actually significantly bigger than the first. Just the mere size of this place was shocking to me. It is way bigger than you can possibly imagine. This place was built with only one thing in mind: the killing of countless innocent people. Auschwitz II, or Auschwitz-Birkenau, was also the site for the selection process. Men, women, and children were removed from the trains and had their valuables taken away. Men were separated from women and children. A Nazi physician would quickly assess whether each person was healthy enough to use for forced labor. And based on this visual inspection, individuals were sent to the camps or to the gas chambers. The disabled, elderly, pregnant women, babies, young children, or the sick stood little chance of surviving this selection. These are the tracks where all the prisoners had to get out the train when they arrived in Auschwitz. The railroad tracks leading through the gate once carried countless souls to their tragic fate. Those who were selected for death were led to the gas chambers, and in order to prevent panic, victims were told they were going to the showers. They were made to hand over any remaining valuables and remove all of their clothes. After being ushered into the gas chambers, the doors would be shut and bolted. The poison took about 20 minutes. Each step forward is a journey into a somber chapter of history, where the enormity of human suffering is almost impossible to comprehend. It's a haunting reminder of the industrial scale of the Holocaust. It also used to be a place where a lot of visitors wanted to take pictures and were balancing on the train tracks. And they had a notice now that it is no longer accepted or tolerated that visitors balance themselves for a photo op in this very emotional and surreal place. Prisoners selected for forced labor had their clothes and belongings taken away. They were showered and had their heads shaved. They were given a stripped uniform to wear and tattooed with an identification number. Prisoners were also classified with colored triangles on their uniforms, so Nazi officials could know if they were Jewish, Roma, and more. At this point, we entered what is known as the death barracks. Most prisoners who arrived at the camp were selected for immediate death. A small number were temporarily spared by being selected as a labor for the German program of destruction. This is where they lived. These barracks were primitive, wooden structure with large wooden shelves for bunk beds. There were 36 bunks per barrack. 5 to 6 prisoners were packed on a shelf to fit over 500 prisoners per barracks. Inmates wore the same ragged clothes for work and sleep. The barracks had no insulation from the cold or heat. The wooden roofs often leaked, and the straw sometimes supplied as bedding was soon filthy and wet. The only toilet facility was a single bucket, and diarrhea, lice, and disease were common. From 1943 to 1944, Birkenau was a killing center as well as a concentration camp. The barracks at Auschwitz-Birkenau were made to look more like stables than shelters. Here, guys, they were stuck and sleeping here. 6 on top, 6 in the middle, and 6 at the bottom right there. This is the quarters where the women were kept. They were designed to dehumanize and degrade. These wooden structures became home to thousands of prisoners, crammed together in inhumane conditions. In these overcrowded and unsanitary conditions, disease spread rapidly. The lack of proper ventilation and heating made the bitter winters and sweltering summers almost unbearable. Here, in these stables, the daily struggles for survival was relentless, a stark testament to the cruelty and neglect inflicted upon the prisoners. Each barrack stands as a haunting reminder of the immense suffering endured by those who were forced to live and die within these walls. The last days of Auschwitz was marked by chaos, cowardice, and an attempt to destroy what was once of Nazi Germany's most efficient tools in the quest to eradicate European Jews. By the late 1944, as the Allied forces of World War II wrestled most of the occupied Europe out of Nazis' hands, it had become clear that the Nazi military, once a mighty force that had invaded and occupied most of Europe after Hitler rise to power in 1933, was headed towards a spectacular defeat. As Soviet forces continued to approach, the SS forces were ordered to destroy the gas chambers in Crematoria, Auschwitz, Birkenau. During this SS attempt to destroy the evidence of mass killings, prisoners were forced to dismantle and dynamite the structures. As we leave Auschwitz, we must confront a harsh reality. This place was built on a foundation of propaganda and lies, designed to deceive the world while systematically murdering millions. The veneer of normalcy was meticulously maintained to mask the horrors within. Today, we must ask ourselves, have we truly learned from this dark chapter of history? Are there injustices happening around us that we are turning a blind eye to? In the world where misinformation still thrives and where atrocities are committed under the guise of righteousness, are we doing enough to prevent history from repeating itself? The lessons of Auschwitz are not just historical. They are a call to vigilance and compassion in our own time. We must ensure that never again is not just a promise, but a commitment we live by every day. Only then can we hope to be better than those who came before us. I hope this video gives you guys additional information and a visual proof, because I know some people still don't believe that this was real. It's a very tragic place. It's very sad. And thank you for watching today. And please drop some comments below. And history, if it's not remembered, is meant to be repeated. So that's the reason why I'm doing this, so you guys can see, and hopefully something like this doesn't happen again. So again, thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for more.